someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat?
Hey, are you guys going to argue with Patrick Baboumian?
Not me.
Hey, everyone, welcome. I am Jim Spellos with my cohorts, Mitch Costell and Brian Maythaler. We are here to say good evening to you and welcome to the Men's Health Special Program of Planned Parenthood Metro New York. This is Take Charge of Your Health, Protein, Prostate, and Performance. We have an action-packed hour and a half. Here's how it's going to work. First hour are going to be amazing presentations and videos. The last half hour at 7 o'clock are going to be your questions answered. A lot of the people who are presenting tonight will come back and be here for that. So do me a favor, in Facebook, in YouTube, in the chats, if you're watching live, first of all, say hi and let us know where you are, but also feel free to ask questions at any time. We will get to them at 7 o'clock. Do us a favor. If you're putting a question in there, put the letter Q at the very beginning just so we can visually see it to make sure we can get to it right away. So we want to make sure we get all those in. So again, 6 to 7, we are going to be going full speed ahead, covering the 3 topics and probably a lot more as well. And then at 7 o'clock, 7:30, the post-game show will give us the opportunity to get all of your questions answered. I don't want to waste any more time. What I'm going to do right now is kick Mitch off the screen and introduce Brian. And Brian is going to take our first guest, Dr. David Deneyev, and introduce him. So Brian, it's all yours.
Hey guys, thank you for being here. My name is Brian. I've been part of PPNY for about like 6 months now, and I'm a future physician. I'm going into integrated medicine, much like our first guest, Dr. Deneyev. And so yeah, I'm gonna introduce him. His bio first. So Dr. David Deneyev is an internist specializing in integrated medicine. His focus is on the reversal, prevention, and treatment of chronic diseases through a nutrient-dense approach, fitness, and stress management. He has had a lifelong passion for nutrition and fitness, and he credits his self-designed rehabilitation program with helping him overcome the limitations of cerebral palsy. He did a 3-year fellowship with Dr. Joe Fuhrman, and he also has 2 offices, one in Brooklyn Heights, like a few minutes away from downtown Manhattan, and one near Long Island, near Stony Brook University Medical Center in Long Island. Hi, Dr. Deneyev. It's a pleasure to have you here. Maybe we can start off by telling us what you do and what got you into the whole food plant-based diet, and why is prostate cancer personal for you?
Well, thanks, Brian. This is wonderful, and thank you for letting me present. I'm really happy to be here. And what I am is, as Brian mentioned, I'm an integrative physician. And so what I do is I combine conventional medicine with lifestyle modifications. And I focus in on a nutrient-dense, whole food, plant-based diet, as well as stress and exercise. And so I have people fill out a form, and we talk about the nutrient-dense diet, and we then have them, we talk about evidence-based medicine. And evidence-based medicine is the medical research, and there's a lot out there. And then I have people followed with labs, basic labs, such as inflammatory factors, nutrient levels, and some other basic labs. So we get a baseline, but we follow them and we see how they're doing. And this helps treat, prevent, and reverse chronic diseases. So my personal story is that this type of diet, this whole food plant-based diet, saved my life. And the reason that it saved my life was that I was in medical school and I was drinking 8 glasses of Coca-Cola a day. And I was taking twice the amount of prescription Zantac because I had a severe ulcer. And when I changed my diet, I was able to get off the Zantac and I was able to feel so much better. And then I also had severe eczema on my hands, and I thought that would never go away, and it went away completely. So this was wonderful for me. And why is prostate cancer personal to me? Well, my father unfortunately died at the ripe old age of 50, and it isn't an old age. I'm just in jest. He died so young, and he died 34 years ago. So I didn't get to spend 34 more years on Father's Day spending time with him. So I lost him too early. And so if I could go back in time, when he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, he did everything wrong in terms of dietary changes. He followed the standard American diet. He thought that gaining weight was really good for prostate cancer. It showed that you were healthy, when in reality, that's the opposite. So when you gain weight, you create more inflammation with more fat. And he ate processed meats, and he ate red meats, and he ate dairy, and he avoided mushrooms. So I'm trying to have you avoid the same agony that I went through by doing this whole food plant-based diet and making these lifestyle changes, including stress management and fitness.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I mean, it's just amazing how these personal stories really inspire us to help others. So I was curious. Maybe you can tell us a bit about exactly what a whole food plant-based diet is.
Sure, that's a great question. Well, most diets focus in on macronutrients. They focus in on protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Whereas a whole food plant-based diet is special. It focuses in on micronutrients. And micronutrients are phytonutrients. Phyto means plant. And when I started 15 years ago, we had identified 10,000 plus phytonutrients. Now, science has identified 25,000 plus phytonutrients. So the field is growing, and what we know is growing by leaps and bounds. And also, very important, besides phytonutrients, are fiber and antioxidants, which have an anti-inflammatory effect, as well as vitamins and minerals. And then what's really important is to know what to eat. You should eat vegetables. You should eat the rainbow, but especially focus in on dark green leafy vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, kale, collards, and those type of vegetables, as well as spinach and Swiss chard. And the reason for that is they have things that are bioactive, such as isothiocyanates, as well as indole-3 carbanols. And those play a huge role in preventing and treating cancer. And then there are tomatoes. Tomatoes have lycopene. And there was a study done, a 3-week study that was done, that showed that 3/4 of a cup of tomato paste actually reduced prostate-specific antigen. That's the way to measure how you're doing. Prostate-specific antigen by 17.5%. And this is an amazing result in 3 weeks. However, what's interesting about it is when they gave them lycopene in supplement form, it did nothing. The results showed nothing. So basically, eat your whole foods, don't take supplements in place of it. So the bioactive compounds are very important, but they come from whole foods, and there's a synergistic effect with whole foods. And then also, besides vegetables and tomatoes, mushrooms are very important, and beans and legumes are very important, especially soybeans, because they have genistein and isoflavones, and nuts and seeds, especially flax seeds and chia seeds and sesame seeds, because they have fiber in them, they have lignans. But interestingly, if you do flaxseed oil, you actually increase the risk for prostate cancer, not decrease the risk for prostate cancer. So you want to have the seed, not the oil. And so those are important. And then onions are very important, and so are intact whole grains. And so you don't just want to eat rabbit food, and you don't want to have salads as old, like a wedge of iceberg or creamy dressing. But you want to have things like sweet greens or just salad, and many different vegetables that are raw and cooked. So it's about volume, and it's about eating the whole foods rather than having supplements.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing some of the science behind it as well. I was curious if you can tell us about your experience following up with patients eating whole food plant-based and their prostate health.
Oh, well, with patients, with their health, what I saw with patients is that I saw that there was visceral fat declined. And visceral fat is the fat that creates inflammation. And their energy improved, and their inflammation went down, and their PSA went down, and they saw tumor regression. And so there was an improvement in constipation, as well as sleep, as well as other chronic diseases. So it was a win-win-win situation. So in order to keep people on this diet, it's a work in progress. So I tell people, if they're 50% compliant, that's great. If they're 75% compliant, that's even better. And if they're 90% compliant, that's excellent. And if they're 100%, they're lying. Nobody's perfect. However, if you have this work in progress, it's great. Plus, the secret sauce is having a significant other or a friend doing it with you, encouraging you, and having community like Plant Pod Metro New York as a resource, and having a routine or a habit, and being able to prep sometimes beforehand on the weekends. But you can go to restaurants and order vegetables and just have the sauce on the side, and you can be with friends and feel like you're part of the group. And then there are resources like watching Game Changers, Forks Over Knives, and What the Health, and there are also cookbooks as well.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that as well. I mean, it's super important to see that people can really do this. You know, that it's really it's a doable thing, and it's not, like you mentioned before, it's not just eating rabbit food all the time. You know, so and just to like wrap it up here, what are some other compelling reasons in addition to prostate health that you know that a man should follow this whole food plant-based lifestyle?
Well, besides prostate health, you see people come to see me for diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and cholesterol. And then at the end of the hour, they say to me, I also have erectile dysfunction, and that's why I'm here. And they feel self-conscious about it, and they don't have to, because erectile dysfunction is just an extension of having vascular disease. And you can reverse these vascular diseases, and Caldwell-Esselstyn showed how you could reverse these vascular diseases. So this is really important. And then athletes, you can show them how you can get better performance. I've had several dozen professional athletes who have gotten better and better by eating a whole food plant-based diet. They don't need to eat 12 egg whites. They can actually eat plants. And there are other chronic diseases such as autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, psoriasis, allergies, eye diseases, and many others that improve. We don't have to go through the same agony that I did with my father. We know so much more than we did then. We're on the precipice of, like I said, reversing, treating, and preventing chronic diseases, which we can't do as much when it comes to reversing and preventing with conventional medicine.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Naif. It's been a pleasure to to speak with you and for you to cover the science behind this and why it actually works, and the fact that it's actually really, really doable. And yeah, it's really inspiring for all of us. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
What is the most important reason men should adopt a whole food, plant-based lifestyle? Well, there are many reasons to eat plant-based that span from global sustainability all the way to personal health and fitness. Since this event targets protein and prostate health, though, I'm going to zero in on that. Mostly, though, just because I know you're dying to hear about prostate health from a woman. I will say, though, that I have experience in this realm, in that my father had prostate cancer before he went whole food plant-based, and he had his prostate removed. According to my mother, this is something you want to avoid at all costs. My parents had been married for 50 years and had an active bedroom life until prostate cancer hit. According to the American Cancer Society, 1 in 8 men get diagnosed with prostate cancer throughout their lifetimes. 1 in 41 men will die from it. These numbers are unnecessarily high, and a better diet can help. What's that, you say? What I eat matters? Indeed, it does. The title of a paper published in the journal Cancer Therapy and Oncology says it all. A plant-based diet prevents and treats prostate cancer. The authors cite research showing that compared to people who eat meat, those who avoid it have half the risk of getting prostate cancer. If you could cut down the risk of anything in half, wouldn't you do it? But what if you already have prostate cancer? The authors underscore a study published in the Journal of Urology that addresses this head on. My friend, Dr. Dean Ornish, conducted the only trial in history to show that diet and other lifestyle changes can halt or slow the progression of prostate cancer in most patients. Compared to the control group, men eating plant-based diets and undertaking a few other healthy habits successfully lowered their PSAs by 10% and inhibited prostate cancer cell growth by 70%. During the first year, 12% of the men getting conventional help from their doctor required treatment. Another 25% required standard treatment by the second year. Men who embraced healthy plant-based diets and lifestyle changes, however, were in a much better position. 2 years out, only 5% needed standard treatment. It turned out that the intervention actually changed how these men's genes express themselves for the better. There are likely many reasons why Dr. Ornish's study involving a healthy plant-based diet worked. The saturated fat and cholesterol, the carcinogenic persistent organic pollutants. One food group in particular stands out to me, though: dairy, because of the role it plays in prostate cancer and breast cancer for that matter. In other words, hormonal-based cancers and dairy are linked. In each of 14 experiments published in the journal Nutrition and Cancer, cow's milk increased prostate cancer cell growth by an average of over 30%. 30%. But in contrast, almond milk suppressed their growth by over 30%. So start milking your almonds, folks. This plays out in the lives of our fathers, brothers, and sons. Research from Iceland found that adolescents who drink cow's milk daily more than double their risk of advanced prostate cancer. And results pulled from 11 different populations found that each glass of whole milk a man drinks per day, each glass, increases his risk of dying from prostate cancer by 43%. Dairy is no friend to men who want to avoid getting prostate cancer, let alone dying from prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the problems linked to dairy. And if you'd like, you can learn more about this on my organizational's website, switchforgood.org. That's switch, the number 4, good.org. We even have an official scientific report that we've just released on cow's milk health and athletic performance that you can download directly from the homepage. All in all, the evidence is clear that eating healthy plant-based foods and drinking non-dairy beverages like almond milk instead of cow's milk helps protect against prostate cancer. But it's only one of many compelling reasons for men to adopt a plant-based lifestyle. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the journey of learning all the reasons during this special programming on men's health. Take care.
In addition to her role as executive director in Switch for Good, Dotsie Bausch is an Olympic silver medalist, activist, speaker, and nonprofit founder. After recovering from a life-threatening eating disorder, she found her love and her talent for cycling, which led to a 14-year professional career culminating in winning a silver medal at the 2012 Olympic Games. Pretty amazing. Thanks also to Dr. Dinea for his great information. I think we have the prostate thing sort of covered a little bit now, but we want to get into even deeper, and I want to bring on an amazing individual, Representative Jeremy Gray. Let me read a quick bio on Jeremy and we'll get right to it. Jeremy's better known in the community as Mr. EYG, and I'm not sure if Y stands for yoga or not, but we'll get into the yoga thing in a second, right? For his continuous service to elevate his community and those around him. He's a politician, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and a former professional football player. He's received numerous accolades for his community service and leadership, and when asked what his ultimate goal in life is, he simply states to inspire. Well, just by being here, you're inspiring a lot of people. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time today. How are you?
Thank you for having me, Jim. I'm great. I love the presentation before me. It was very informational, and it really hit on everything that I've been telling people for the last 7 years. So,
we're all saying the same thing. It's great, but people need to hear it in different packages. So you were a collegiate football player, professional player as well, but you also learned the benefits of yoga at a one age, which I know mean a lot to you. So how did that come about?
So I actually learned about yoga through sports, specifically football. We used to do it for like inflammation and just recovery. And just through that, I gained the knowledge of yoga on a physical level. But then I started practicing yoga, becoming a practitioner and an instructor. And I actually developed the mental part of yoga, the breathing, the clarity, stress, anxiety. And that's what triggered me to basically change my diet. I always kind of been a thin, muscular, fit body type. So I never had a problem with my weight or anything of that nature, but it was more of wanting to find enlightenment and really wanting to be, one with myself and find union with self. And I thought that, through fasting that I could get there. And I stumbled onto something called vegan. I really didn't know what vegan was at that time, but through research, I really like the benefits of being vegan or just veganism in general. And that's kind of how I got into the yoga vegan lifestyle. It was more from a search to basically find my better self.
It's amazing the searches that we go on, what we stumble into. When was it exactly that you started following? I'll call it whole food plant-based, but people call the different things. When was that starting point for you?
So I've been plant-based for the last 7 years. So what that would have been maybe like 2014, 2015. So that was like my last year playing professional football that I actually got into changing my diet.
So interesting. I started around 2014 as well, but I'm really curious. You did this after your professional career. How do you think it would have benefited you if you had that lifestyle while you were playing collegiate and professional football?
Yeah, if I would have known about being vegan or, just plant-based or just yoga in general as a child, I think that it would help me tremendously throughout my career with longevity. We're talking about tightness and, all the things that athletes deal with. I think it really, really helped. But it's too bad that I kind of caught it on the back end. But it's all about just having a great life, right? And so right now, I just want to have a fruitful, long life. And that's kind of why I am in this space right now. But
Well,
yes.
Yeah, speaking of a fruitful life, you've been doing amazing stuff. People probably might not know you're a representative in Alabama, but tell us about your successes in getting family and even what I found out, some colleagues more interested in understanding this lifestyle.
So I'm in the deep South, Alabama, and so we're very much into our food. So when I first started my yoga journey, I got a lot of just kickback from people in general, especially my family, because they didn't understand, the transformation I was going through. And so we kind of fast forward 7 years, and now, when we have Sunday dinner, because we were big in Sunday dinner down south, they actually make two separate foods, right? They eat their food and then they cook a vegan option. And sometimes some of my family members, they try my vegan collard greens or whatever it may be. And so I just thought that was neat because look how far I've come from 7 years ago when I was like getting talked about and shamed to them embracing it and cooking it. And even on a political level, one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, he's the chair of rules. So he's a very important, powerful person in Alabama politics. Me and him had a connection one day because we was at an event and I found out that he was vegan, right? And then he started telling me his benefits, how he could walk up the stairs, the inflammation in his body, how he felt better. And me and him connected we don't connect on many things, right? Because he's very conservative. And I'm more of I'm a Democrat. I'm not like, left-leaning Democrat, but we just have some differences when it comes to politics, and to actually hear a guy who used to just like steak and drink wine with his food, now going plant-based. I thought that was kind of like a bonding moment. And I think that's something that we can actually take to the legislature and just basically tell people that this is the correct way to eat food. And a lot of people have adopted not necessarily vegan, but they try my vegan food because I'm the only vegan or plant-based person that's in the legislature. And you have a lot of my colleagues that want to try my food, or they get vegan or plant-based that day. And so I think it's just cool how I've been able to, just a short time of me being in politics, 3 years, I've been able to change people on the yoga level, because I lifted a 28-year ban, and now I got colleagues that want to at least try to be more plant-based.
Amazing stuff. I only have about a minute or so left, but I know also you're trying to take what you do and bring it to the youth of your community. Can you explain a little bit more about what you've been doing, especially, I believe, this past weekend?
Yeah, so I have a community center called the Curtis House. The Curtis House is named after my great-grandfather. It's a resource hub for vulnerable, impoverished community. And a lot of things we do yoga. We had a yoga event this weekend, a walk and run event, 1.5 miles, and we did yoga at the end, and they got a massage. We also have an organic garden. So for me, it's all about teaching the community how to be whole, healthy, more nutritious people. And so I'm glad to have that community center there. And it's just so beneficial to the community, not only from a food standpoint, but also just being a productive person as well.
Amazing stuff. Jeremy, I wish we had all day to be able to chat. You do know you're going to have to send that vegan collard recipe at some point.
Okay.
But Jeremy, great. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Dr. Fuhrman here to remind you of some of the most critical and important nutritional findings of this last decade. First of all, science has identified certain plant foods as offering spectacular protection from prostate cancer and breast cancer. And I've labeled these foods for easy recall as G-bombs, standing for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Each one of these foods have been shown to offer radical protection when added to a conventional diet. But if you really want to see the magic happen and get dramatic protections against later life cancer, eat all the G-bombs every day. My mantra is make a big salad the main dish at least once a day. And for maximum anti-cancer benefit, put beans on the salad, scallions or red onion, and some cruciferous vegetables like arugula, kale, or bok choy. Then top it off with a seed and nut-based dressing, not one made with fattening oils. Nuts and seeds have been shown to offer dramatic enhancements in longevity for those eating them every day instead of oils. In fact, you should know that is one of the most important findings of this decade, and that is more than 17 large studies have corroborated with no unexplained confounding results that eating nuts and seeds reduce heart attack rates by a whopping 39% and radically lower cancer rates too. In fact, the inclusion of nuts and seeds in the diet is one of the most powerful protective dietary modifications you can make that shows consistency and a high credibility in the scientific literature to be protective. And lately, I've been saying G-bombs plus T, given the tremendous protection tomato sauce offers against prostate cancer too. I would be remiss if I didn't include the second most critical finding of the decade, a finding that's now been reproduced in numerous studies, drum roll please, and that is reducing or eliminating animal protein, and in its place, eating more high-protein plant foods have been shown to be a powerful tool for life extension. In other words, low-protein, high-carbohydrate, low-fat plant-based diets are not ideal. They shorten lifespan compared to a diet with a more moderate fat intake, utilizing nuts and seeds, that contains these higher protein foods like beans, lentils, soybeans, as well as the high protein nuts and seeds. They make your diet more protein and fat adequate with the right type of protein and fats, especially that digestive capacity to absorb protein declines in the elderly, and more protein per calorie is needed for optimal immune defenses as people age. Eating the nutritarian diet, which combines beans, greens, onions, nuts, and seeds to enhance protein bioavailability and phytochemical diversity, is the most effective for athletes too. But overall, it makes a world of difference when you eat these high protein containing plants like greens, beans, lentils, seeds, and nuts, as it protects your immune system with aging while you maintain better muscle and bone mass. All right, this is Dr. Fuhrman signing off Wishing you great health always. It can be yours.
And for any of you who don't know who that was, Dr. Joel Fuhrman is a board-certified family physician, 7-time New York Times best-selling author, and internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing. He specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods. For over 30 years, he's shown it's possible to achieve sustainable weight loss and reverse heart disease, diabetes, and many other illnesses using smart nutrition. At this point, I'm going to actually bring in my buddy Mitch. We were lucky enough to have the next guest on the show, but he needed to be interviewed beforehand. So Mitch, why don't you introduce who we're going to see, and then we'll play the video for everyone.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Great job so far. So, everybody seen The Game Changers? If you have, you definitely should see that movie. If you haven't, you definitely should see that movie. But this next guest, his name is David Goldman, and he is basically behind the scenes in The Game Changers. He is actually the chief science advisor to The Game Changers. He has a dual Ivy League graduate degree in applied physiology and nutrition, and he helped build Facebook headquarters nutrition program from scratch. David has years of experience as a dietitian, conditioning specialist that spans from obesity research to actually coaching Olympic athletes and celebrities. David Goldman.
David, thanks so much for your time. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Protein. How much protein should people eat for their health?
The Food and Nutrition Board of the Institute of Medicine, these are some brilliant scientists at the top of their game. They set the RDA, which is the recommended, what is the RDA? Recommended dietary allowance.
Yeah.
Daily allowance.
Yeah.
So that's the amount of protein estimated to meet the needs of 97.5% of healthy people who are engaging in, quote, modest levels of physical activity. So these experts set the recommendation at 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight. And if we're trying to gauge whether people are meeting those needs or falling short, we can look to a subset of the very largest forward-looking study in history on diet and health. That study is called EPIC. And in the journal called Nutrition Research, in 2016, researchers published that this massive group of people, whether they were meat eaters, pescatarians, vegetarians, vegans, these people were exceeding this recommendation. So we're really doing great on protein for health, and we really don't need to look to emphasize more of it in developed nations.
What if you're an endurance athlete? How does it change?
So I have textbooks on sports nutrition here. One of them is called Nutrition and Enhanced Sports Performance. And they place protein recommendations for endurance athletes at 1.2 to 1.4 grams of protein per kilogram body weight per day. So you can see it's more than that RDA. And then the question is, are people hitting this? Are people, without really trying to go above and beyond on their protein intake, are they actually achieving this recommendation? So there's a journal called Nutrients. They published in 2016, and also BMC Nutrition in 2019. These researchers looked at protein intake in meat eaters, vegetarian, and vegan runners. And all of the groups landed inside this range. So it really comes as a function of just that you're burning more calories because you're exercising more. So you eat more food. All the food you're eating is going to have some protein in it. And so you just naturally bump up inside that range. So the answer is we're hitting it without much effort, regardless of whether we eat meat or don't eat meat or any animal products.
So what about maximum muscle mass and strength? Any difference?
Okay, so for that, protein recommendations are going to go up even higher, right? So the requirements to maximize muscle mass and strength. Here, I would turn to a paper published in 2018 in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, and they found that above an intake of 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, so that's double the RDA. Going above double the RDA led to no further gains in lean mass. So we have a target, and then the question is, are we hitting it? I just finished drafting a paper. I'm going to be submitting this for peer review this month, basically showing that if we take two of the largest cohorts of omnivores, vegetarians, vegans, pescatarians. One is the Adventist Health Study 2, and the other is that EPIC study that I mentioned before. If we basically just scale up these common plant-based diets to meet the calorie needs for weight training and growth, they're gonna hit that 1.6 or go above. So yeah, again, really, we just need to eat enough food, eat healthy, whole food, plant-based diets, and we're going to do great on the protein front, whether it's just for health, for endurance performance, for getting huge.
So in reality, do most athletes overshoot or undershoot their protein requirements?
So there are a number of studies that have looked at this. They all show the same trend. One of the studies, 2003 International Journal of Sport, Nutrition, and Exercise Metabolism. There's two other studies published in 2018. One in the journal called Medicina, another one, Nutrition Today. There's a third one, 2019, the journal is called Nutrients. They all show the same trend, that athletes are overeating fat, they're overeating protein, they're undereating carbohydrates relative to these recommendations. So we just see this consistent displacement of carbs in the diet by virtue of over-consuming fat and protein. So one of the major things that I almost always recommend to athletes who I work with is that they sort of rebalance those macronutrients so that they hit the targets for each of them.
So final question, what's the downside of getting too much protein?
So there's a great paper published in 2019. The journal is Advances in Nutrition. And they basically showed that short-term clinical trials often show benefits from increasing protein, but that comes from weight loss. Mostly, if you create weight loss, you can have improvements. You could see reductions in cholesterol from someone suffering from malaria. So really just weight loss can lead to improved biomarkers of health. So those are the short-term studies, and a lot of people like to fixate on those. But I like to look at the long-term health outcomes. I think that's what's going to be more relevant. And as an example there's a 2018 meta-analysis published by Harvard researchers. They looked at 7 multinational communities, and they found that when people replaced carbohydrates in their diet with animal sources of fat and protein, like bacon and chicken wings, just as an example, they increased the risk of premature death by 18%. Now, if they replaced the carbohydrates in their diet to a measurable extent with protein and fat coming from plant sources like nuts and seeds and avocado, they actually decreased their risk of premature death by that same amount, by 18%. So the source matters. And that's where I would say there's this overemphasis on macronutrition, like protein, oftentimes at the detriment of the details. And as we know, the devils are in the details. So it is certainly worth replacing as much of the animal protein in the diet with plant protein as possible for long-term health. But then, yeah, it seems like I have yet to see great research suggesting that we need to really make an effort to, limit the amount of quinoa or other protein containing plant foods that we eat.
So don't be afraid of those carbs, in other words, right?
Yeah, that's carbs and protein. I mean, it's everything, right? These are all certainly worth including. I wouldn't be afraid that I need to limit the amount of lentils in my diet so that I get less protein. There's really no research suggesting that there's a detriment, only benefits to be had from eating more high quality whole plant foods like that.
David Goldman, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Michael Klaper, and I've been a practicing physician for almost 50 years, and I've been eating a whole food plant-based diet for 40 of those years. And I can tell you, if you want to keep your health and your sexual performance, keep your arteries wide open and the blood free flowing, and nothing does that for you as well as eating a diet based on whole plant foods. I'm 74 years old, and I feel like I did when I was 40. I take no medications, I go on 50-mile bike rides with my friends, and my lovely wife will tell you I have no performance problems in the bedroom. You know, it's never too late to start eating healthier. So if you want to heal your body, get off your medications, and create a more sustainable world for our kids and their kids, I urge you, start eating a whole food, plant-based diet. It is delicious, and I assure you, you'll be glad you did.
For those of you who don't know Dr. Klaper, he's a gifted clinician, internationally recognized teacher, and sought-after speaker on diet and health. His Moving Medicine Forward initiative, which you can check out on his website, is doing just that, helping to train young physicians about the power, I should say, of applied nutrition. And with that said, and we can just dissect so much of what's been going on and what's being talked about here, I'm going to add somebody else here, our next guest, Jason Fonger. And Jason, before I give you a chance to talk, let me give you a formal, proper introduction. He is a renowned authority on plant-based eating, passionate educator, popular social media content creator, and elite-level triathlete. He adopted a plant-based diet in 2009 to overcome being chronically fatigued. And he believes the best possible time to answer the question, where do you get your protein, is after he wins a race, which makes perfect sense. Jason, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the intro. You can hear me okay?
I'm all great. I got a simple question. I love your shirt. I think our shirts are matching today. You bet.
Yeah.
So why did you go vegan? Why?
I mean, initially I read the liner notes to an album, one of my favorite punk rock albums by a band called Goldfinger. And the album is called Open Your Eyes. And I didn't realize it, but, this band, there are a lot of vegans in the band, and they'd put, messages in the liner notes about animal rights and what happens to the animals for food and clothing and entertainment and all that. And so I was sort of just really shocked by that. And I couldn't eat meat for quite some time. So I was vegetarian for a few months, but I sort of struggled with that, eventually went back to eating meat. And then, I just, had some health issues. You mentioned I had, very sort of chronically fatigued, never actually diagnosed, but just feeling really tired and just not feeling great. I kept getting throat infections, so I ended up going plant-based then a few years later after that for health reasons, in addition to all of those animal rights sort of reasons that were still in my mind and were making me feel uncomfortable. So that's how I got into it. And then as the years went on, I've learned about the environmental benefits and all these other great benefits that everyone's been speaking about. So that's how I got into it initially.
Yeah, you sort of get in for one reason, and the other reasons just come aboard kind of naturally, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So we got your motivation for becoming vegan. What's your motivation for becoming a triathlete?
So, I mean, I'd always enjoyed running and biking and swimming as a kid. I mean, just sort of for fun, right? But I mean, I remember back in 2012, I was taking a trip out to Hawaii, and I just so happened to pick this book up. And looking for something to read on the plane, and it was Finding Ultra by Rich Roll, who I'm sure some people are going to be familiar with. And I read that on the plane to Hawaii. And if you read the book, that sort of he did that big five that was in Hawaii, and so it was sort of this synchronicity happening. And I got to Hawaii, and I was like, okay, I'm already biking and running, so I'm going to try to learn this swimming thing. And I went out in the ocean the first day I was on the island of Hawaii. And I got pulled out in a riptide, and it was this like crazy experience where I'm thinking I'm gonna die. I'm just getting pulled out from the island. The island's just getting smaller and smaller, and I'm just going out into the ocean. I'm thinking, what's going on here? I'm trying to swim to get back, but nothing's happening. And I felt so helpless. And I just sort of I had this realization that okay, hopefully I can get out of this, and if I do, then I want to do something good with my life. And long story short, I ended up making it out, and getting out of that situation, I already, just because I was reading the book on the plane just the night before, I was thinking, it'd be fun to get into swimming and learn how to swim better. And then that sort of scary experience sort of inspired me to get in the pool and learn how to swim. And ultimately I wanted to do something with that, which is to, ultimately become a decent athlete and maybe start, doing well in some races and, promote plant-based eating, which is what I'm now doing. So that's sort of how I got into triathlon. And but it was many years before I started competing. At first I was just doing it for fun, and sort of the benefits came, and I ended up doing well in some races. So,
and I love Rich Roll's. I love Rich Roll's podcast as well. He's a very inspiring person indeed. What about this lifestyle that supports the athletic performance? I know we spoke with Jeremy about the fact that he didn't have a whole food plant-based lifestyle when he was a professional athlete. How does it help you?
I mean, it was just so amazing listening to David speaking a minute ago there. And, he touched on so many great things. I mean, For me, I think, if we just talk about health, plant-based, whole food, plant-based eating is going to be good for human health. And that's really a baseline for performance. But I mean, one of the great things about plant-based eating is, when we talk about whole plant foods that are, rich in carbohydrates, like those are really what I find. I mean, I do eat a higher carbohydrate diet, and I know, we don't want, I'm definitely not super restrictive with low fat or low protein or anything like that. But for me, I focus on making sure I'm getting those carbohydrates. David mentioned a lot of athletes are not meeting those carbohydrate needs. So I go by a formula that is 10 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight per day. And that's what I track. And I know that I focus on the whole foods. I know the proteins and fats are going to be packaged into the different foods I'm eating. But as long as I'm hitting those carbohydrate needs, I just find, my recovery, my ability to perform during training is just through the roof. So I feel like that's a huge advantage that I have over other competitors, is just this understanding of carbohydrates and how they help, and, not being afraid of eating carbohydrates, which a lot of people seem to be. So I think that's a huge advantage for me.
A lot of people would hear that amount of carbohydrates and they're trying to do the math on Google right now and going, no way can you do it on that much carb. But obviously that is the case. That's exactly how it works, right? So
ask David, but that's as far as I reading the literature, that's not an absurd recommendation for high level athletes, is 10 grams or more per kilogram of body weight per day.
I mean, that's an awful lot of carbs a day, but guess what? I think we're all eating that same amount and we're feeling great. So got to be working somehow. And I'm sure your recovery is even better than it ever was before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel just very fresh after, as long as I'm getting those good foods in, it really helps a lot.
One last question. What else is motivating you to continue with this lifestyle?
I mean, I just see so much potential for positive change in the world. It's unfortunately, when we look at a lot of the issues that are happening, a lot of them do come back to our food system and our exploitation of animals. And it's just, for so many different reasons, encouraging people to eat more whole plant foods. It's just a win-win-win. And I mean, I do a lot of work with schools, presenting to, high school students and things like that. And it's just so inspiring to see their reactions to this information. A lot of people are wondering why this information isn't made more readily available. And, it's, for me, I'm optimistic because I see a lot of people adopting this way of eating. And I see that there's really a lot of changes happening. The availability of plant-based foods is just getting better and better. There's rising awareness about all this stuff, so I'm optimistic, and I'm just happy to be playing my part in helping to make some changes happen.
And we're real happy to have you as part of the team and helping with the whole food plant-based lifestyle. Jason Fonger, you can reach out to him at jasonfonger.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jim. This is great.
Hi, my name is Marc Ramirez, and I'm president of Chickpea and Bean Inc. It's so important for men to take care of their own health. Why? Because we have our children, our spouses, our loved ones, friends and family who are counting on us to take care of them. And if we're not taking care of our own health, we're certainly not going to be able to take care of them. And I know this firsthand because at 43 years old, I was type 2 diabetic, I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, I was obese, I had heartburn all the time, and I had psoriasis all over my scalp. And on top of that, I was taking 5 different medications, including insulin shots. I was sick for a decade. And then fortunate for me, I came across a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And in a matter of 2 months, I was able to eliminate all those medications. And in 3 months, I shed 50 pounds. I'm talking to you almost a decade later, still off all of my medications, and at 53 years old, in the best shape of my life. So I know this lifestyle works. And once we take care of our own health, we're gonna now make sure that we're able to take care of our children. And not only that, but living this way, we also help the planet, we help the environment, we help our health, and we help other sentient beings. So if you want to be a real man, let's go ahead and take care of our own health so that we can take care of all those loved ones around us. Take care and have a great day.
If you don't know Marc Ramirez, he's a former U of Michigan football player, and that says enough about anything you need to know about him, because that's an amazing university when it comes to football. Also a TEDx presenter who lost 60 pounds. I'm going to have to read this because the list is so long. Reversed type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, psoriasis, obesity, frequent heartburn through the power of food. As you heard, Chickpea and Bean, he and his wife have this amazing company whose mission is to educate people about the power and benefits of a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And with that said, I'm going to bring in my partner, Mitch. How are you, Mitch? All going
I'm
well?
doing well. Doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. Before I give it to you, I want to remind people to please ask your questions in the chat in either YouTube or Facebook and let us know, because we're going to have, starting at 7 o'clock, those questions and more being answered. With that said, Mitch, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next interview of the day.
Thank you. And that would be my friend, Mr. Dan Shuman. So Dan, if you don't know Dan, he's a great asset to the whole food plant-based community. I'll just read a quick bio on him, and then we'll get right to the questions. Good to see you, Dan. Okay, so Dan Shuman
Hey,
is
Mitch, great to see you too. Great to be here.
Dan Shuman is a plant-based chef and educator. Dan reclaimed his life and health after transitioning to a whole food plant-based lifestyle. He advocates, educates, and demonstrates plant-based cooking for thousands across the globe. Dan posts most of his content on his Instagram page, which is at Dan's Manual. Dan is the moderator of the Whole Food Plant-Based SOS-free What's Up chat and WhatsApp chat, and the Kosher Whole Food Plant-Based Facebook group as well. Great to have you, Dan. So let's get right into the questions here. So number one, what led you to explore the whole food plant-based eating?
Thank you, Mitch. And I'm so happy to be here. It's been so inspiring hearing everybody else speak. So what got me into it, I had struggled with my weight most of my life. Never really had any significant health issues, but every trip to a doctor was not the most encouraging experience of my life. I was always told I was increasingly at risk for more and more things, specifically type 2 diabetes. And I had chronically dieted my entire life. I always wanted to lose weight. I wasn't happy being the size that I was and limited in the way that I was in my performance. So after trying, countless things and programs over the years, I had really come to the realization that it was time to do something and do something different. And my father was actually given a book by his physician called Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, Dr. Fuhrman, who spoke earlier in the program tonight. I read the book and it stuck with me. I initially was, I tried to discount it initially, but after trying to debunk the science in it, I was unsuccessful in doing that and decided to give it a try. And the results were not only was I not suffering, but I was able to see results very quickly. And it was extremely empowering for me to be able to finally be in the driver's seat, to take control of my life and to achieve the goals that I wanted to. And having those tools, having that understanding of nutrition, like I said, was so empowering, and it was like a light bulb going off in my head. There was something I was finally able to do. I was finally able to control this. I was able to reclaim my life and start experiencing it a little bit more and enriching my life.
Excellent, excellent. So it sounds like you've been on a journey like most of us are. You're seeking all different ways to do something, and then you finally found the right way, or what we consider the right way, the whole food plant-based eating. So next question is, what was the transition to whole food plant-based eating like?
Yeah, so it was really wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be in the beginning. I found that I was eating a lot more food than I thought I was going to be, especially compared to other programs that I did in the past. I was really eating very delicious food and high quantities of food. And like I mentioned, the results were quick. And once I was able to see that, I was losing weight, but that's not everything, but my performance was getting better. I was able to do things that I weren't able to do previously. So I started incrementally with it. I like was said in the beginning of the program, anyone who says they're doing this 100% likely isn't being fully straightforward. Although I do think it's possible, and there are people who at least get very, very close to 100% and do very well with that. For me, it was a little bit more incremental. It was, the weekends I would allow myself a little bit more grace to still have some animal proteins and things like that. But the more that I did this, the more that I realized that I didn't really crave those things after time. And when I was able to recognize the way that I felt from eating more whole plant foods, I would kind of build in cheat days. I remember my wife and I, we built in a day to go for Chinese food. I always like eating Chinese food, being the good Jewish boy that I am. And, we would get up to that day where it was time to go have that Chinese food, and I would be like, yeah, you know what, let's push it off another month. Let's try it next month. I really don't feel the need to have it. I'm really enjoying what I'm eating. I'm enjoying the way that I feel. I don't need to do that. And that really, having that really holistic and intuitive way of understanding the foods that I was eating and how they made me feel, that was really it. And, you know, when I would indulge, I would also recognize how that made me feel in contrast to how great I would feel from eating, you know, mostly whole plant foods. So those combined really helped with the transition and helped me, you know, incorporate more whole plant foods into my lifestyle and to see, you know, success. And at this point, I think I could say it's lasting success because it's been over 4 years now. I lost 170 pounds. And I could do a lot more that I couldn't do previously.
Excellent. So yeah, I think we all transition in at our own pace. Some jump right in and some just transition slowly. But I think the more you study and the more research you do, people tend to just dive in deeper. So I guess the next question will be, what type of performance changes did you experience after incorporating more whole food plant-based diets into your diet?
Oh, it was massive. I mean, it was incredibly dramatic. You know, before I had started this journey, I was in the mindset that I wanted to get healthier. I wanted to lose weight, but I also wanted more than that. I wanted longevity. I wanted lasting health. You know, my family history, health-wise, isn't great, and so I knew that the deck was stacked against me. So previously, I bought a bicycle at one point, and you know, I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. I was on a bike most of my childhood. And I always felt like, oh, that's something I can always go back to. I'll always be able to ride a bike, you know, and I'll be able to get exercise that way. So I bought a bike. I got on it. I live in Far Rockaway, New York, near the boardwalk. And I got on there and I couldn't get 10 feet on the bike. And I was incredibly dejected. It was very disheartening for me. But pretty soon after I started eating this way, I want to say maybe a month in, I was able to go for like an hour bike ride right away. And since then, it's only increased. I've been able to lift the weights, to grow muscle, my daily bike ride now is 12 miles. On a Sunday, I can go 40, 50 miles. I'm really just limited now by time more than anything else. So really every aspect of my life, my performance has improved, be it, you know, physical activity, exercise, weightlifting, but also time with my family, my human experience. That's something I always say, that I found that this journey has helped enrich the human experience for me. It's helped me get the most out of my life. I could play with my kids more without getting winded. I could sit on the floor and play with them without feeling uncomfortable. Intimate relationships, absolutely. You know, with my wife, we're absolutely benefited from it. You know, performance issues that I may have had in the past went away, and quite the opposite, without getting too graphic for everybody. But it really is a true thing. And I feel it's important to share, to let you know that this type of performance is approachable, it is achievable, and it's something that you can do without suffering. You can eat delicious, great food. You can highlight and put the food that you eat on a pedestal. And really, it's not about, like was said before, it's not about eating twigs and leaves. It's not about a life of deprivation. There are really incredible foods out there if you just put a little bit of the effort in, or look to some of the people who have been doing it for a few years to help model it a bit. And you could really have a happy, enriched life and really increase your performance as well.
Okay, so it sounds like you actually put more life into your years. That's good. We're running a little bit short on time now, so I'll just have you had two more questions there. I'll try to ask them quickly, and maybe you could just answer them real quickly. So we talked about what do you eat,
sure,
and how do you manage to prepare those? Would you have an active lifestyle? I think we'll just keep it at that because I know you're very much into food. If you can keep it to about 30 seconds to a minute, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Just, real quick, preparation is good. There are staple items that you could learn to have around that make making meals much easier. When I have certain things at home, I keep falafel balls, curry cubes in my freezer that I'll prep maybe once or twice a month that I can grab really quick if I'm short on time when I get home from work. But also just having a few quick meals in your repertoire can make it easier too. But also just keeping it simple is very helpful too. I have a friend who's a plant-based gastroenterologist, and she'll just send me pictures of her chomping on, whole bulbs of fennel. And sometimes I'll just grab, something like a head of romaine lettuce, some fruit, things like that to get those veggies in when I'm on the road. It maybe not doesn't sound like the most appealing thing in the world, but you see how you do crave those things. But above that, there are absolutely complex and incredibly delicious high-level meals and foods and snacks and all sorts of things that you can have and can do. And I'd be happy if anybody wants to reach out afterwards. I'd be very happy to help anybody, for ideas or whatnot, because I'm very passionate about this. It's completely changed my life for the better. And I just want to share this message, and I think everybody else here tonight does as well. And I'm just very thankful, Mitch. I'm thankful to everyone here tonight for hosting this event. It's so important for everybody. So thank you.
And thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. So much great information. Very inspiring.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Nimai Delgado. I am a vegan professional bodybuilder. I was featured in the Game Changers documentary, and I am also a former mechanical engineer that turned to a vegan health and fitness coach that specializes in helping people adopt a plant-based lifestyle and also optimizing performance on a plant-based lifestyle. So the question is, why is it important for men to adopt a plant-based lifestyle? And I could sit here and talk about all the benefits from environmental reasons to animal welfare, but I primarily focus on what I believe to be the most important, and that is your health. Health is something that is taken for granted by many people and oftentimes neglected and overlooked. And in my experience, through helping thousands and thousands of clients adopt a plant-based lifestyle, not only do you improve your health, your energy levels, your vitality, your quality of life is something that improves as well, because whenever we stop feeling and hearing the noise that lives within us, the constant soreness, the low energy levels, the lack of motivation, all of those things tend to dissolve whenever you adopt a plant-based lifestyle, because your body naturally heals itself. And in engineering, we talk about optimizing systems. Well, your body is a series of different systems that work together, and a plant-based lifestyle can help make each and every one of those systems perform better. And I am speaking from my own personal experience that after making the switch from already eating healthy to adopting a fully plant-based lifestyle, everything shifted, everything improved. My sleep quality, waking up with higher energy levels, that produced more motivation for me to work towards not only my physical goals, but my professional goals, also how I showed up in relationships, all stemming from just deciding to be more conscious and more intentional with the foods that I put into my body, because ultimately these foods become a part of us. And just like anything else, it is important to make decisions that have a high return on investment, and there is no better investment than your health. You could talk to anybody in a hospital that will confirm that. So I am going to end this message with just encouraging you guys to be open-minded, to try it, to acknowledge that there's a possibility that you could improve your quality of life significantly just by adopting a whole food plant-based lifestyle. Thank you, guys.
Hey guys, do we need to say any more? It's pretty well said by Nimai right there. It's been an amazing hour. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to do a quick graphic. We're going to bring some more chairs in the room, bring everybody back, and we have the post game with your questions coming up right. Got crowded in here all of a sudden. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. This is the post-game show. For those of you just joining us right now, I'm Jim Spellos with Mitch Costell and Brian Maythaler. We are hopefully delivering what we have promised, which is a take charge of your health hour and a half about protein, prostate performance, and a heck of a lot more. Brian, I'm going to hand it over to you because I know we have a couple of questions out there. Why don't you lift off with the first one?
Yeah, so earlier, Wendy Sachs asked a question about if one has an enlarged prostate, how can following a whole food plant-based diet have it return to its normal size?
Now we're going to see, is Dr. Danaeff on here right now, or did he step aside for a
If
second?
not, we can wait till he comes back and go to the Dan
wait till
question.
he comes back. I know there was a question that just came up regarding food, and Mitch, why don't you ask Dan, because you were already in that direction in terms of what do you eat?
Sure thing. So this is another question from Wendy. Thank you, Wendy, for your questions. And it's Dan, it's specifically for you. It says, what are your basic go-to foods and meals? You started with some. Can you let us know more? See, people are interested already. You got to promote that Instagram page because that's where you have everything there. I've seen it. And I believe in it. Oh, you froze there.
Yeah, the food definitely, I think, sells it more. See how incredible the food can be. That really helps. So, can you hear me?
Yep. Oh.
Okay, great. All right, so some of my go-to foods, I'll just go breakfast, lunch, dinner real quick. Breakfast, a big one. I'm a big steel-cut oats guy with a ton of fruit. Use almond milk instead of, maybe you would have used classic, cow's milk in the past. Flax seeds, hemp seeds, I throw them in wherever I can. Lots of whole fruits wherever I can. I'm a big green smoothie guy also. With lots of greens. It's a way for me. Dr. Fuhrman talks about getting a pound of cooked vegetables and a pound of raw vegetables in a day. So instead of looking at what I'm not eating, I try to highlight the powerful foods that are packed with micronutrients that are going to help me, and how am I going to get those in? So one way that I find appealing is a green smoothie, but some other ideas too. Pretty much any dish that you've liked in your previous life or previous way of eating, you can make a whole food plant-based version that is, just as appealing as your previous one. I do a plant-based potatoes and a sauce made out of cashews. I do nachos I did today. I'm doing tacos with oil. I'm a big mushroom guy. Anyone who's heard me speak either on Instagram, on Clubhouse, I'm a huge fan of mushrooms. They are an excellent replacement for maybe where you had meat in the past. There's so many different things that you can do with them. So, I really look at planning meals the same way I used to plan meals, but just subbing in foods that are going to work for me instead of working against me. Lots of hearty soups. Tacos is a big one I mentioned before. Chilies, curries, wraps. I'm a big collard green wrap guy. That's a great way to get greens and vegetables in quickly and easily that travel well. And whole grain salads. Just a quick go-to one I love is quinoa, pomegranate seeds, lime, and mint. It travels really well. It was an old faithful for me. It stuck. It helped me. I could travel with it. I could pack it. If I'm going away somewhere, and have it with me. Get a ton of nutrients in that way as well. Those are just some of my go-to ideas and foods that I have.
Fantastic stuff. I'm going to pass this question along to both Jeremy and Jason to find out what you guys are eating on a regular basis. Jeremy, why don't you go first?
Dan pretty much said it all. I mean, all I do is basically stuff the things that I like. So if I, like spaghetti or tacos, or I'm just eating whole fruits and vegetables from the garden. So it's really just about just studying the things that you already like and just making it work for you in a healthy way.
Jace?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of specific foods, I love fruit. I do a lot of fruit smoothies. I find that's what I really crave after workouts, especially. So I keep it kind of lighter in terms of more fruits and things like that during the day, and then it's more at night when I'll gravitate towards more more of the grains and sweet potatoes, things like that. Sort of the heavier foods. So that's sort of how I roll in terms of like what the daily food intake looks like. But I also love things like overnight oats are great, just stuff you can prepare advanced to make it easy. But absolutely, you got to go with what you like and just try to find those substitutions that make sense for you.
Yeah, I know Dr. Fuhrman talks about having one big salad a day. We definitely do that at lunch all the time. You see, Dr. Danaeff has joined us again, and I know one of the questions had been about prostate. So, Brian, why don't we get that on the table for him right now?
Oh yeah, for sure. So Wendy Sachs asked earlier if one has an enlarged enlarged prostate, how can following a whole food plant-based diet have it return to its normal size? So Dr. Danaeff.
Well, it's a great question. the BPH, or benign prostate hyperplasia, is an interesting disease because it doesn't follow as well inflammation. And so there's not a lot of research on whether BPH responds incredibly well to a whole food plant-based diet. I mean, it would help to reduce the prostate to some degree, but I haven't seen and I haven't found any research showing specifically that a whole food plant-based diet actually changes the size of the prostate. I wish it did, but I don't see any currently.
So interestingly about that, it doesn't reverse it, but let's say somebody is diagnosed with prostate cancer. Is it too late for them to switch to a whole food plant-based diet?
No, it's not too late with prostate cancer, but with benign prostate hyperplasia, I haven't seen any studies that show that you can shrink it. I think you can prevent it from getting larger potentially, but I don't think you can shrink it. And the difference is that prostate cancer is based on inflammation and PSA and other elements that a whole food plant-based diet would actually show benefit. Whereas benign prostate hyperplasia, we're not really sure what, once you have it, what causes it and what can reverse it. What we know is that it seems to be more of a physical issue than it is more of a inflammatory or systemic issue, but more of a physical issue. Kind of like when you run and you get a callus, it's more like a callus from sitting more often. And when we sit on our prostate. Men sit on our prostates unless we cross our legs or unless we put our feet slightly up. We relieve that. Once you put your feet up, you see the pressure comes off the prostate. Or when you lie down, the pressure comes off the prostate. So people who are truck drivers, I had somebody who was a truck driver and who was had a enlarged prostate because he was always sitting on his prostate for hours and hours and hours. That's why many men develop it. It's basically almost like a callus.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. I know that Jeremy has to leave in a couple of minutes for another appointment. We really didn't get into the yoga conversation as much as we would have liked to, but how would you suggest someone who doesn't do any yoga, where do they go to start and start it up? Are there good resources that they can go to online? And what do you suggest for them as a good starting point?
The thing about where we are with technology is you can Google anything. You can go to YouTube. With yoga, I would first just start off doing breathing exercises because that's the most important part of yoga, just being one with your breath. And then once you kind of get used to the breathing and maybe the YouTube, go take a class at the local YMCA or your local gym or your local yoga studio, and just kind of start with general yoga classes, and then you can advance, and then you can get into like hot yoga and all those things. But yoga is one of those things, just like life is a journey. Everyone doesn't start off at the same place. Some people are just more flexible and just can hold better poses than other people. But the essence of yoga is just the union with oneself and the breathing. And so as long as you can take 5 minutes a day to breathe and reflect and just think about, what's going on in your life and how you can be a better person, that is yoga. You can start there.
Do you feel men have a harder time getting into it than women do?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at classes a lot of times. If you look at a yoga class, there's going to mostly be women there. Unless you have athletes that really understand, the benefits of yoga, then most of the time it's just women. But if you just leave it to breathing and the meditation part, a lot of men can jump on board. But when it comes to those poses and all those things, men rather work out, run, do manly stuff. So, it's one of those things you have to adapt to it.
But you were a football player and you did manly yoga to help you out. So I guess there's some value there, right?
That's right.
I know you got to go. I'm going to throw a question out that I heard the phrase being used, and some of us know what it is, some don't. But when we talk about these diets, SOS comes up a lot. I'm just curious if for Dr. Danaeff and Jason, and whoever else wants to answer it, what are your thoughts on that? Is it valuable? SOS meaning no salt, no oil, no sugar. So What do you guys think? Jason, why don't you kick it off? Do you do SOS?
I mean, I think it's important to remember, as someone like myself, I'm not super careful to, have salts. Like I'm sweating a lot, so I am having some added salts. I can understand, people who have certain conditions, high blood pressure, there may be definitely good reasons to eliminate SOS, the salt, oil, and sugar. I do definitely consume some refined sugars. And most of that has to do with being around my training and when I'm racing, consuming some fuel that's going to just be the most efficient way for me to perform well. So I would not be in that camp of eliminating all of those things. But I think that for some people, it could definitely make a lot of sense. But again, I'm not a doctor. I'm just speaking from my experience as an athlete. So maybe we can hear from David on this one.
Well, David, what do you think?
Jason, that's a great response. And I think that to some degree, he's right about an athlete doesn't necessarily have to follow the same SOS idea. But for most of us who are not athletes and who are not doing long bike rides or long runs or those type of things, or not football players or things like that, you don't need to follow the SOS idea of trying to avoid too much refined sugar, oil, and salt. Now, if you have a little bit of oil, it's not awful, but the saying goes, from your lips to your hips, because when you think about it, oil, the body doesn't have to break it down. So in other words, it gets absorbed and it becomes pure fat. Whereas if you get your fat from things like avocado and seeds and nuts, your body actually has to break it down and excretes probably about 90% of it. So it takes energy to break down these nuts and seeds and avocado, where it doesn't take any energy to break down oils. So oils are to fat as juice is to sugar. So when people have fruit, they're better off having whole fruit rather than fruit juice. And that's the average person. And most people are in this category. Athletes will not be quite in this category, but still they can do better with using smoothies and stuff like that don't necessarily raise their sugars. They can do green smoothies that don't raise their sugars by not putting juice into it, but by putting whole fruits and whole green vegetables and things like that. Now, if you're doing long runs or long bike rides, of course it's hard because you need a little spurt of energy here and a little spurt of energy there while you're doing a 50 or 100 mile ultra marathon or an ultra bike. That's completely different. But if you were to take the normal human being that most of us are, not the super athletes, you would say try to avoid SOS, because the salt is not only for high blood pressure, but the salt can cause heart disease, can cause exacerbation of osteoporosis, can cause exacerbation of autoimmune diseases. So you want to be very careful. And dark green leafy vegetables have a lot of added sodium. So if you eat a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, you're getting somewhere between 700 and 900 milligrams of sodium a day, which is great. And so you want to add less salt, and you'll always get a little bit of salt from what you're doing in your day. And you'll always want to try to stay, for most of us, less than about 1,500 milligrams ideally. For some of us, we can go up to 2,300 milligrams. But if you go beyond that point, it plays a role with dehydration. It plays a role with gout. It plays a role with kidney stones. So you want to be very careful with SOS. And as far as refined sugars go, there's a recommendation of no more than 24 grams of refined sugars. And it's really not just refined sugars. It's sugars that raise your foods that raise your sugar level. Like dried fruit, it can be basically refined sugar to many people, like diabetes patients, and to many people who are sensitive to sugars. And you see their sugar levels go up beyond what they're supposed to when you look at the 1 and 2 hour mark after they've eaten. So you want to be very careful with sugars, oils, and salt. So yes, I would say that SOS is an important factor.
So my takeaway right there was oils are to fat, with juices to sugar. It's an amazing way to be able to put that together. Hey, Brian, Mitch, you guys SOS or no? Just curious.
Mostly, I try as hard as I can.
Yeah, same here. Like pretty much 95%.
I'm not 100% either. Nobody's 100%.
Nobody's.
And I always say to people,
One of the issues is going to be as we get back to normalcy of whatever that looks like, and people start traveling again. I found it's been really easy for the past 18 months to eat healthy because we're eating at home every day. What are the pitfalls? And Jason, I know you do traveling with what you do, and Dan, I see you back on again. So let's get you here too. Let's ask Dan first. So pitfalls of eating out and what can be done to make sure that people eat healthfully when they are out, either at a restaurant or out on the road traveling.
Yeah, so when I travel, my first stop is always a supermarket. If there's a Whole Foods in the town that I go to, that's my first stop. But then as far as a restaurant goes, there's almost always something that you could find. And, be assertive. Speak to the waitstaff. As long as you're speaking respectfully and nicely, generally they're going to accommodate you. Dr. Fuhrman says, ironically enough, his favorite restaurants to eat out at are steakhouses because you can always get plain baked potatoes and salads with dressings on the side. You could ask for some lemon, maybe vinegar or something, a balsamic vinegar, things like that. Depending on how strict you want to be. Sometimes eating out can be a little bit of a time to indulge if you're SOS free normally and you're going to get veggie dishes that maybe have those things when you go out to eat. That could be an option too. I've done that at times, and sometimes I've just gotten plain. I've spoken to the staff and been accommodated and gotten what I need to do and still maintained a social life and have been able to interact with my friends and family.
Hey, Jason, what are your thoughts on it? Oh, David, yes.
One quick question, one quick comment. I agree with Dan. I think that when you go out, SOS, you try to be as good as you can, but you're human. And human is, and that's great. And I like Dan's attitude. I think that's right on the mark with that. And also, I wanted to make a comment about BPH, but let's finish with Jason or Dan before I interrupt.
Jason, go for it.
I mean, I would just say, I think it's really important to have, for most people to have a bit of that flexibility. I mean, obviously there's going to be people out there who may be in a very serious situation with their health, and they're going to want to be a little bit more strict on that and limit those kinds of, eating out, what that looks like. But I think it's healthy to have a little bit of leeway, for social situations and to be able to enjoy and indulge. And I would definitely just wanted to say as well, especially when it comes to oils, I mean, like I feel like I can get away with a bit of added sugars, but if I start to have real oily foods, I do find that makes me feel sluggish and affects my performance. And I know that if you're keeping the oils low, and you're eating the fats that I'm taking in are mostly from those whole food forms, that my body's ability to process sugars is going to be better than it would be if I'm eating a lot of oil. That's going to affect my insulin sensitivity and things like that. So I think that's also important to keep in mind. But when it comes to eating out, during this time that I think you're absolutely right, Jim. Everybody's been at home. It's been easy, cooking stuff for ourselves. And, maybe it'll be a bit of a test for some of us getting back out to the restaurants.
It very well might be. Prostate, or BPH, you're going to talk about that, David?
My prostate's good.
Good to hear. Then we can go into some.
I'm sorry, I have a bad sense of humor. I always tell patients the better your health gets, the worse your sense of humor gets, because you have time to spend time on your sense of humor and fixing it, and don't do that because that means you didn't have a good sense of humor to begin with. Having said that, as far as BPH goes, the better you do with eating, the better you can do with avoiding BPH. But once you have it, that's the difficult part. However, what we do to treat, and I was thinking about this, what we do to treat BPH is we help with the vasculature. So if you can help remove plaques from the vasculature, you can potentially make the stream more, a stronger stream, and get more value from the stream, even though the prostate's larger. So you still may be able to get benefit if you have vascular disease and you're able to clean that up.
Perfect. We're about to wrap up the time we have, so I want to give Dan, David, and Jason all a minute or so just to say, what's the one piece of information that you want men to take out of this 90 minutes? And what's the one takeaway that you think is essential and is something that's immediately implementable? Dan, how about we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, really quick, there's just a lot of misconceptions out there. when it comes to diet and when it comes to what we need to be having every day. I know I was kind of driven a little bit crazy about it over the years with the protein and the meat and thinking that you can't perform, but the evidence is there. Look to the evidence, don't look to the gimmicks. And just like what Dr. Denaf was saying before, we live in a world that is set up against success in this way. Wherever we go, you can go to a pharmacy and you're assaulted by a wall of candy bars when you go to check out. So it's important to just have that grace for yourself, and whatever level you're ready to commit for it, and understand if you do grab things that maybe aren't on your program, that's an expected outcome. It's the world that we live in. It's foods that have been designed to get you to do those things. Just try to make the next decision better, and try to recognize how you feel. Like what Jason was just saying about how he feels after he eats oil. I can relate to that so much, and that's what I talk about when I say I'm, eating intuitively with this way. I found this is a very way to supercharge, eating intuitively and gaining a better understanding of what powers us and what works against us. And good luck, everybody. It's a great world. It's absolutely worthwhile, and the benefits are immense. So good luck, and thank you for being here and prioritizing your health. Thank you for having me on here.
David, last thoughts. What do men have to take out of this?
Keep it simple. When you do this diet, you can do it and you can keep it simple. You don't have to make it complicated, and you can get what you need from it. You can do the G-bombs of what Dr. Fuhrman talks about. I did my 3-year fellowship with Dr. Fuhrman, so I have much appreciation with that. So keep it simple. Be able to do it so that it doesn't take a lot of time. If you want it to take a lot of time in the kitchen, that's great, but keep it simple and make it so that you can apply it to every day, and make it so that it becomes a routine. Don't make it something that you stress about. Make it something that you build upon. When you think about athletes, and I'm going to use a golfer, you build on your swing as you golf. And I've golfed several times. I stink, but I've golfed several times, and I usually get 81, but that's on the back 9. The front 9, I'm worse. But anyway, so you make it simple and you build on that swing. And as you build on the swing, you're going to get better and better. But don't stress about it. Keep it simple. Interact with people. And when you go to restaurants love it when people come to you and you change their menu or you ask for something. I have people who have gone to the restaurant 3 months later, and the manager comes up to me when I'm changing the menu or changing what I want because I don't want this in it or I don't want that. And she goes, "Oh, I remember you guys. You guys are the blah, 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 blah. And you eat so healthy." So people appreciate it when you talk to them about a whole food plant-based diet. So keep it simple, and you can do it wherever you are.
Keep it simple. Jason, what are your last thoughts on this?
I mean, I appreciate the golf advice. I was out with my dad yesterday, and it didn't go so well. Don't do that very often, so I'll keep that in mind, David. I think great advice from both of you guys, and I would just say there's so many opportunities to find new delicious foods out there. If you're hesitant and you're just not sure about giving up some of your foods, like don't feel like you have to do it overnight. Just try to find time to experiment and try maybe foods that you haven't tried before. I mean, I eat way more variety after going plant-based than I did before. I used to eat the same foods all the time. So, don't think of it as you're depriving yourself. Think about it as you're opening up to this whole world of plant-based food that's out there. And I mean, just all the presentations, that's in this event alone. I mean, hopefully people are getting the message that you'll get enough protein, you can perform, you're gonna, it's gonna be better for your health and everything in the long run. So just embrace it and get excited about the plant diversity that's out there.
And one word of caution, can I just leave with one word of caution? And that is that we want a whole food plant-based diet. So we want to be careful, and it's become more mainstream, and it's really wonderful, and it's really wonderful that people are talking about it. But watch out for plant-based foods, because plant-based foods do not mean whole food plant-based diets. So when you have meat substitutes, you're not going for whole foods. And when it says organic, you can have organic cyanide. I'm sure cyanide is organic. So, eating organic cyanide, I don't think you're going to come back saying, I had organic cyanide, but I still feel a little sick. I'm not sure why. So just be careful of all these catchphrases and have fun doing it, and it'll expand as you do it, and you'll get enough protein, and it doesn't matter how old you are, and it doesn't matter whether you're an athlete, and it doesn't matter who you are.
We're gonna put one more question into the hopper. It came in. It's too long for us to show on the screen, but essentially it's about seafood, and so are there benefits to including certain kinds of seafood, bivalves, small cold water fatty fish, to a whole food plant-based diet because they're rich in vitamin D and iron and iodine and selenium. So is there value to that? I know a lot of people in the blue zones, eat a primarily vegetable fruit diet, but do have fish. So Dave, since you're the doctor of the house, I'll give you a quick first answer of what you think about seafood in a whole food plant-based diet.
Well, when I see some diets, I used to be on a seafood diet. When I saw food, I ate it. That was my seafood diet. But having said that, there's a debate about whether fish is good or fish is not good. And it depends on which source you look at. And as far as whole food plant-based goes, whole food plant-based doesn't mean you don't necessarily eat animal protein. So I don't want people to be turned off and say, okay, you have to go vegan. Whole food is not synonymous, another word for necessarily vegan. Is it better not to have a lot of fish or animal protein? Yes, you want to keep it at least less than 10%, especially according to T. Colin Campbell and his China study. And there was another study recently that says less than 10%. But fish can be valuable for some people, especially compared to what? And if that means you're not going to eat red meat, that's great. If that means you're not going to eat chicken, well, fish is so much better. It adds so many more things. So for some people, it works out really well. But if you look at some studies, it'll suggest, well, not having fish is better. And then some studies suggest, well, having fish is better. So as far as I go, I try not to have animal protein at all because animal protein can add to all these different things. And there's a lot of toxins in fish, except for small fish, which tend to be anchovies or sardines. But when we talk about anchovies and sardines, we're not talking about the anchovies that go on the pizza that's salted to death. We're talking about actual real anchovies. And so I'm not suggesting that we eat fish or we don't eat fish, but of all the animal protein, I would think that's the best to focus on if you're going to eat animal protein. And I wouldn't do it more than 2 times a week.
Great answer to the question. I know we're running out of time. So Dan, David, Jason, you guys are all awesome. We're going to let you leave the studio now. And just thank you so much for being here.
Just one more thing on the fish is I think, David, you'll probably agree that if for people who don't want to eat fish, and there's many reasons not to, if you've seen the recent film Seaspiracy, there's nothing to my knowledge that we can't get from, we can get all our omega 3s, we can take algae, we can get our iodine from, seaweed and things like there's no reason to have to eat fish. Am I wrong? I mean, so, I think that's just important to know.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah. But what I don't want to do is intimidate people who still want to have something and they feel like fish will keep them on the market. And no pun intended, fish on the market. Never mind. But anyway, so it keeps them on.
You were right about your sense of humor.
Yeah, thank you. It's really bad. But anyway, thank you so much. But you want to keep them, you don't want one thing to throw people off and say, I can't do this diet. I can't do this, and this is going to stop me from doing it. So if I do this one thing, will it keep me going? And if the answer is yes, then do it.
So we're going to end it right there. Dan, David, Jason, you guys have been awesome. Gents, any last words you got?
I think overall it was great. Having so much information jam-packed into one, I think it went really well. Considering all the different types and varieties of guests that we have. So I think overall is great.
Mitch?
I thought it was absolutely so much information there, jam-packed. You're just going to have to watch the video over and over again to get all that information inside your head again. And I just want everyone to know that us here at Plant Power Metro New York, we're here to help. We're here to help on that journey wherever you are, whatever your goals are. We're here to help you. And we hope that you'll help us to help you put more life in your years.
Absolutely. On behalf of the entire plant-based Metro New York community, Mitch and Brian, I'm Jim Spellos. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on a replay, still reach out to us. Go to our Facebook page, go to our YouTube pages. There'll be information on it in the closing credits. You guys have been awesome. Thanks. Ciao. Wrong credits. See, that's where you mess up. The very last thing. We'll go here.
Strong.